detectives found her body. She was in a like a wooded type area.
Investigators combed the scene for clues.
She was killed by asphyxiation. Duct tape was found over her mouth and nose. The killer not only bounded her to get away, he bounded her to kill her.
She had ligature marks on her neck, double ligature marks. We didn't know what kind of, could have been rope or wire or anything.
The survivors of previous rapes in the area were all left with ligature marks on their necks, caused by some kind of thin cord or garrote.
We had rapes and a murder, and the similarities were that whoever was doing this was using a garrote, and that he would tighten it, and he brought these women in and out of consciousness, the two survivors anyway.
With the double ligature marks, there was a quick connection made to the Bike Path Rapist, who had been terrorizing Western New York for years previous to this.
All of the victims had this on their necks. It was his signature. This is how he controlled his victim. But with Linda Yalem, he killed her. Whoever this was escalating.
The shocking news of the rape and murder makes national headlines. Linda's friends back home in California can't believe it.
My father called and made sure that my roommates were around. He didn't want to give me the news when I was by myself, and he's the one who told me. I was devastated. I mean, it was very hard to believe.
When you hear something like that, you just can't help not. But, you know, just totally lose it. I mean, why? It's senseless.
Linda had been at the University of Buffalo for just 3 weeks. She was pursuing a career in public relations.
Linda was very sweet and outgoing and caring, and that's why everyone loved her. Just the reaction was just total shock from everybody. That how could something this bad happen to someone this nice?
You can't take anything for granted, because she was there one day, perfectly happy, healthy, going places, bright, bright future, and then next day she's gone.
Searching for clues, homicide detectives review the case files of the earlier rapes.
There were a number of attacks. It was long suspected that many of the crimes were committed by the same individual.
And they started putting together a pattern of rapes where women were attacked on recreational paths.
Police believe the Bike Path Rapist had assaulted at least 6 women, ranging from a 14-year-old student to a 32-year-old businesswoman. But until now, he'd never killed.
Now you know you have a serial rapist in the community who now just murdered a college girl.
Detectives re-interview the surviving rape victims. One woman recounts the horrifying morning she came face to face with the killer.
I was going to school on time, and the friend who was supposed to walk with me, he was running late, so I just went by myself. I wasn't even on, walking past the railroad tracks for 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops before he came behind me and grabbed me. I felt something come around my face, grabbing me and pulling me. It felt like a wire.
The victims were attacked pretty much the same way. There was a garrote used, which is kind of a rope or a wire type device that was used to gain their compliance.
It's completely terrifying because you have absolutely no power or control of what's happening. You can't breathe, so you can't think clearly of what to do.
He would carefully plan locations, not victims. There really was never a victim type, but there were distinct locations.
And he would just wait. Whoever it happened by next was the person he selected.
Once he got me to the place where he wanted me, he instantly tied my hands up behind my back, so I was laying on my hands. So I couldn't move, I couldn't go anywhere.
Composite sketches based on the victims' descriptions are strikingly similar.
I saw he had olivey skin, like Puerto Rican or Spanish.
Some of them had him as Italian or Hispanic with a possible Spanish accent. They had him with dark hair. But there's one thing all the victims said. He had piercing eyes. He had these eyes they would never forget. Deep, dark eyes that they would never forget.
Every single person, they said there's something about his eyes, and it was consistent among all the victims. They kept saying there's something about his eyes and I really can't describe it.
Figured the best thing was just to do what he asks, and he said that if I did, he would leave. I think if I were older and I fought harder, it would have made him more aggressive. And making him more aggressive would have made things a whole lot worse for me.
Although DNA testing was relatively new in 1990, Dr. John Simich from the County Crime Lab uses samples taken from the victims to confirm investigators' suspicions.
I forwarded the samples to the FBI for RFLP testing. RFLP is restriction fragment length polymorphism. It was the first generation of forensic DNA testing that was developed. They were able to determine that we had several rapes and one rape homicide in the area that were done by the same individual.
Police now have a pattern and a profile. The bike path killer waits in ambush, targeting women and girls walking alone. The attacker is of Hispanic or Italian heritage. And a garrote is used to subdue the victims, leaving a trademark double ligature mark around their necks.
We came to see that the same person was not only doing the rapes, but had now graduated to homicide.
Buffalo's Bike Path Rapist is now a confirmed killer. As detectives step up their manhunt, a panicked public wonders, who could be next? The murder of 22-year-old Linda Yalem shocks Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs. With a killer on the loose, police and the media urge women to take extra caution when jogging or biking.
The warnings were more, don't go on the path by yourself, take somebody with you, have a dog with you. The attacks were more in the morning, so be careful if you're there during the dawn hours.
Everybody in this county knew about the Bike Path Rapist. The sketches, the composite sketches of him were everywhere.
Within the community, there's both fear and outrage that the rapist turned killer is still at large. Investigators turn to the rape survivors for help.
Some of the other women were distraught, and it was hard for them to talk about it or help out. Well, for me, he got one day. From the moment it happened, that was my decision. You ruined one day for me, and I wasn't going to let you ruin anything else. And if it took me doing whatever I could to help the police find you, I was going to do it.
With a concerned community demanding an arrest, authorities also appeal to local residents for help.
Amherst Police Department did several news conferences where they've asked the public to come forward.
We eliminated people through their work records, that maybe they were out of town. And we talked to all different kinds of men from all different walks of life. Professional people, working people.
Desperate for a break in the case, police send a female officer out as a decoy.
What we did with her is we put a neck brace on her, had her go out and run, and we would set up officers in different locations, so if she got in trouble, she could call out to us.
Surveillance teams pose as campers in the woods along the bike path.
We actually put officers out in the woods in camouflage, laying there in the woods, starting like at 5 o'clock in the morning, just in the event somebody would show up. If he saw something suspicious, he would call for a uniform patrol to stop and check the guy, get his identification.
Men matching the suspect's profile are asked to submit a blood sample for DNA testing.
In 1990, DNA technology was just getting going. Amherst, eager to catch the killer, was sending blood samples from everyone that they possibly could think that could be the bike path killer. And they were sending dozens and dozens, and at one point, the FBI told them, look, you gotta stop. You're sending way too many. You really need to narrow this down.
I know at one point we were up to like 40 people that we took DNA on, and it just got to a point where we just kept digging, and we just never hit on the right one.
For weeks, then months, the investigation continues without an arrest. For authorities, there's a growing and frightening realization. The killer is as careful and clever as he is dangerous.
If he's on a jogging path, he was wearing a windbreaker and a baseball cap. So was everybody else. He fit in. He was the guy that blended in. He never raised any suspicions.
But with a history of 6 rapes and 1 murder, detectives believe the killer can't help himself, that it's almost certain he'll strike again.
He had always been a rapist, and now all of a sudden he was a murderer as well.
There's no accident involved here. You look back at these cases, he was going toward being a murderer.
But for 2 years, the killer lays low. Then, Buffalo police receive a disturbing 911 call.
There was a guy, I believe he was walking his dog, and he came across a pile of debris. And when he started checking it out, he discovered it was a body underneath. There was a kitchen garbage bag tied around her neck, over her head, a sheet of plywood on top of her, some rocks thrown on top of that, just to make it look like a pile of debris.
Officers identify the woman as Majane Mazur. The 32-year-old had been reported missing by her husband several weeks earlier.
The autopsy said it was a combination of strangulation with a ligature and suffocation. She had a double ligature around her neck mark, which was consistent with our other cases we investigated.
Authorities contact Majane's estranged husband regarding his wife's death. Their daughter, Christine, then 5 years old, remembers her dad's reaction.
I came downstairs and my dad was sitting on the edge of the bed crying, and I asked him what was wrong, and he said that my mom wasn't coming back anymore. I just remember kind of like a video playing in my head over and over again of her being loaded in the ambulance. And my dad taped that newscast and watched it a lot. I don't remember anything else after that. It was like just a gap.
Although Majane's neck bears the double ligature mark, there is little else to connect her murder to the bike path killer.
She wasn't found in a bike path. She was found in a field, and it didn't match that way in any of the evidence in the other bike path type cases.
It was a different kind of victim. They didn't even think that this could be possibly connected to the bike path rapist.